I can see Ruth Jacob. Ruth Jacob, are you there?
Hello, yes I am.
Okay, okay. You're welcome. Can you? Okay. We see you. You're welcome. Ruth Jacob. We are very excited to have you here. Very professionally for fashion industry people. We are very excited to have you here. We can't wait to hear from you. So, can you introduce yourself before we start, please?
Sure. Hello everyone, my name is Ruth Jacob. I'm a lecturer in fashion marketing at the University of East London, so based in East London. I've been lecturing there for just over a year now. Prior to that, I've lectured at other universities in London in the area of fashion marketing and also marketing and business studies. I'm working on a menswear line, so I still dabble in the industry as well as teaching. So yeah, there's a few things going on. But yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of the panel today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ruth Jacob, is there a checklist African designers should know before starting the marketing of a new collection?
So there are a few things that came to mind when considering the question. I think one thing that is really important is that they should know who their customers are. So any designer wanting to design something, they should know who their customers are. Are they younger people, children, babies, for example? Are they older customers? Do they have a smaller or a larger proportion of disposable income? If you understand these different elements of who your customers are, you can start to design in a way that caters specifically to them. So one of the things that you can do is develop something called a customer profile. So it's something that explains certain qualities and certain characteristics that your customer will have, or someone buying from you. You'll understand what they like, what they have available to them, what they're interested in. You'll understand what they read, how they are informed, how do they find out about fashion. And then you can also be sure you place yourself in these places where you can get to your customers. And another good thing to do is also find out what similar brands are doing. When you understand and see how they're operating, you can operate in a way that emulates what they're doing, but you can also find out certain things that they're not doing, and you can then cater towards them. So for example, if say a particular brand doesn't have a strong, say, social media presence, you can choose to develop a strong social media presence and really interact and engage with people. If you know that's something that your customers are interested in, you then put those things in place of them. If you know that your customers read a lot of magazines, find ways to put your products in those magazines so that you're in front of your customers effectively, so you really connect with them and create that relationship with them as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your answer. We appreciate. Going to Ruth Jacob, what do you think is missing in African countries to set up fashion schools? With this question, maybe also Karen will reflect on that question. So what do you think about this question?
So yeah, I think there was... Sorry, is that me or Karen? Sorry.
You before Karen.
Sorry, no. I think actually Esther really touched upon some really, really good points. She mentioned about there being the support for there to be, say, manufacturing elements, and that's something that's really, really key in fashion. And she mentioned rightly that's something that's definitely happening more so in the East, in eastern parts of the world, like in Asia. But that's something that would be really, really supportive and really help. I can say fashion as an industry taking place in more in Africa. But in terms of the education point, I think there should be a really positive view of fashion as a means of employment. There's a joke that I normally tell family and friends that in African communities, so I'm from Nigeria, and in African communities, there's something considered the holy trinity of employment. So doctor, lawyer, or engineer, those are like the key jobs that you have to have if you want to be seen as someone productive or successful. So when you think about a subject like fashion, it's not something that is supported, whether that's at education level or even beyond. So for that to be supported in school, I think there should be a positive view of fashion as a viable employment opportunity, as a means of being able to really support yourself and really do something good, not only for yourself, but obviously for future generations as well. I think there should also be facilities made available for students to learn. So that's developing connections with the fashion industry. One of the key things that Esther also mentioned is GT Fashion Weekend, and there are different elements of fashion that are presented not only in Nigeria but in other parts of the world. So you've got GT Fashion Week, Nigeria Fashion Week, Lagos Fashion Week. There are many Fashion Week organizations that are happening around the continent, I can say. So them people being made more aware of them, and these organizations linking with education and linking with schools, that's something that would be really, really good. Also looking at the broader areas of fashion. Design is a key element of fashion, without a doubt, but there are also textiles, there's also marketing, there's buying, there's manufacturing, there's merchandising, there's management, all of these different elements. There's legal aspects related to fashion, copyright, creative and intellectual property. All of these are subjects that can be presented and linked and shown. The links with fashion with these subjects can really be shown, and it's something that can be expanded to those areas. So for example, someone who works as a lawyer, you could look at fashion law, and then you can bring a fashion into that area of education. Someone who wants to be an accountant could be an accountant for a fashion organization. Again, you're bringing that link in with the industry. So you're showing the viability, you're showing the strength that the fashion industry has. And sometimes people just almost see it as like something that doesn't have substance, but there is a lot of substance in fashion. And I think people seeing more broadly and more, I can say, more from a rounded point of view, it's something that will make people realize, yes, this is something really solid, this is something really viable. And hopefully that can be something that supports fashion as a means of education and fashion schools taking place as well.
Thank you so much. Karen, Rwanda Cultural Fashion Show, in collaboration with the other institutions, we have conducted the research where we have found different issues, like we are talking about the quality of clothes, we are talking about who can design a clothes, we are talking about the marketing and the promotion of the clothes. This question, I think you will help us to understand in a broad way, in a big way. Are there any specific tools governments should use to support African growth fashion industry?
Yeah, so there are some steps that governments can take. Something that I've been aware of is there are governments and nations overall that have set up things like fashion councils. So that's something that can be done with, say, for example, on an individual nation basis, but also the continent of Africa is supported, or there is a connection through the African Union. I know, for example, the European Union, they have council, there are elements of support that they provide for the fashion industry in different parts of Europe. So the fact that African Union exists, there should be an element of support for the fashion industry across Africa as a whole. So that's something that can be done. There's also organization called the Commonwealth Fashion Council, and they support Fashion Week organizations in basically areas of the Commonwealth. So that's outside of Africa as well, but there are nations within Africa that are part of the Commonwealth, so that's something that can be done. So they really work to just really support, really promote fashion weeks and fashion as an industry, and also fashion education within the Commonwealth. There's a further organization called UNCTAD, that's the short name, which stands for the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development. And one of the things that they've done is they've supported fashion organizations, fashion designers in different parts of the world to use fashion to develop, their economic activities in those respective nations. Again, that's within Africa, outside of Africa as well, but there are definitely African nations that can use fashion and that can connect with UNCTAD to support fashion as a way of developing their economic activities within their countries. So that's something that can be done. I think fashion in Africa is not like fashion anywhere else. it's got so many unique connections, whether that's with Asia, whether that's with Europe. And that's something that people really should be aware of. Fashion within Africa is something that's linked. I'm aware of things like indigo, the dye used to make denim. The way that's used and created in Africa, it's different from how it's done in different parts of the world. Sometimes people aren't aware of that. So really, there should really be a push to really promote and to really celebrate fashion and culture that comes from Africa. And I think that's something that the government should really, really work to be made aware of. And there are things that people have said here, like Enrique talking about musical artists, and I believe Esther mentioned that, well, musicians being something that people link to Africa very, very significantly, but that's something that can happen with fashion as well. I think people should really, when they hear Africa, fashion should be something that comes to mind, as well as the music, as well as the culture and the dance, etc. So yeah, just really celebrating what fashion is and linking that very, very much more closely with Africa.
Okay. I still have one question to ask you as a professional profession in fashion. We have had this issue in Africa. I'm talking about, no, I'm not talking about in Rwanda only. I'm talking about in the different African countries where you have been. I have seen that in Kenya, I have seen that in Burundi, I have seen that in Uganda, in some other Africans. We have these categories of designers. We have fashion designers who went to school, who learned fashion. We have other designers who are talented just to be talented, and we also have like other group of people who love fashion but they don't know where to start. And when it comes on a market, it's hard to collaborate. It's hard for a developed fashion designer to collaborate with an upcoming designer because of many reasons. So what do you think is happening, and what do you think should be done so fashion designers can work together, like to support the same journey?
It's a really good question. I think number one, definitely just feel free to celebrate each other. I think definitely one, celebrate each other, but also I think different things happen. So knowing who you're catering for, there are different people, the different people, young, old, male, female, etc. So know who you're catering for. You don't have to necessarily be trying to vie for the same person. There are so many people, so know who's out there and know who you want to try to approach and know who you want to try to reach. Collaboration is definitely something that can take place. I think one of the things about fashion is it's very distinctive. You want to have your own style, you want to have your signature on what you're doing, and that's maybe where the concern with collaboration comes from, wanting to have that distinction. But what can happen is you can collaborate with each other, but still also have your own distinct focus. So again, it goes back to knowing who you're focusing on, knowing who you want to cater to. So imagine if, say, for example, a designer wants to focus on a woman who's in her 30s. One designer may want to focus on a woman who's in her 30s who wants beach wear. Another designer wants to focus on a woman who's in her 30s who wants evening wear. Another one wants to focus on the same woman who wants work wear. So you can have different designers focusing on, I can say, different areas, even if they're focused on the same customer, but you can still have those distinctions. The point about collaboration, again, I think it's still about wanting that distinction. So
okay.
Yeah, so it's not that it can't take place, but I think allowing designers to also have their distinction, to have their own signature on what they're doing. I think it does take place. I think collaboration between industries as opposed to collaboration between artists take place. So someone in the fashion industry collaborating with, say, musician, or someone collaborating with an influencer or with a model, that takes place. But designer with designer, that doesn't. It's not as known, if I can use that term. But it's something, you never know. It could be something that takes off and really supports fashion industry. That could be something that Africa does, to bring its own spin on that activity.
Okay. Going to we know internet is the digital marketing is a good to fashion designers, but we have had some designers or some cases where a fashion designer will go on Google, pick a picture of a Nigerian designer, for instance, then you can copy paste. So what do you think, or what do you think designers need to know in terms of laws and regulation, copyrights, about copying something from internet? What's the consequences of the product with that counterfeiting?
Just to interrupt, so that's more so a question about how to deal with counterfeits, do you mean? Is that what they're...
Yes.
So it's an annoying fact and a very unfortunate fact, but counterfeiting is something that is linked with fashion. You can, if any well-known brand is aware of that. So you think about Louis Vuitton, Burberry, many examples of their trademarks have been copied by others. So unfortunately, that's something that does come with the industry. But one thing that you can do is be consistent with what you are producing. That consistency will show and will automatically link, whether it's your print or your logo or something that is synonymous with your brand. The more consistent you are with that, the more people will start to see that, link that with what you're doing. Regarding the legal aspect, one thing that I would encourage people to do is, where possible, get as much legal advice as possible, because laws are country-based, if I can say that. So the law in one country may be different to how the law operates in another country. So understanding how the law works within your own country and also understanding how it works internationally is something that's really good to do. So again, if that element of understanding can be linked with fashion, it's something that we're really designers. But ultimately, it's just about being consistent as much as possible, so that whenever people see, say for example, whether it's a logo, whether it's a color or an image, they automatically link it with what you're doing. So Nike do that very well. As soon as you see a Nike tick, you know it's Nike. That's something that designers can do for themselves, develop something that's really distinct, unique, that can be for you and for your brand, and use that consistently. And that then becomes part and parcel with what you're doing.
Okay. Before I see on Ruth, I have seen at the University of Eastern London, you have this kind of library, kind of a place to search, like a website that have information. What do you think should be done in Africa to maintain the fashion industry for its history? For example, we are talking about no schools, we are talking about we have fashion promoters, we have fashion designers, we have what already have been done. What should we do to maintain that history so that upcoming fashion designers we learn from that? Then another question will be, what are the opportunities for African people to come to study professional fashion marketing at your university? Yes.
So the first question regarding how people can be aware of fashion history is, one key thing is just to document it. So if you can find ways to write and to present and to create awareness and understanding of whether it's craftsmanship that happens in Africa, so a certain weaving technique, or if it's, for example, the indigo example that I mentioned, that's something that I saw in a documentary film. So if there can be ways that people can document their practice. One of the unfortunate things about, I can say, African history is a lot of our history in some ways hasn't been documented. People aren't aware of their history. It mostly comes through spoken word, which is great, but there isn't a tangibility with that. So if that can be documented physically in book form, so that can be, for example, people becoming publishers within Africa, having the opportunity to document and to present and to show those elements of fashion production, those elements of design, that's something that will keep people aware of African craft moving forward. So one of the things that we've been talking about is social media. If there can be, say, for example, websites, Instagram page, Facebook pages, something that shows how our work takes place. Having it documented is something that can keep it ongoing in the future. So having something documented is really, really key. So for me, I work in education, and a lot of what I do is based on things that I've read in books or based on what other people have read. So having something that you can read, whether it's a book or whether it's a magazine, something on a website, just something that allows you to document what you're doing, something that allows you to document what has been done. That's something that's really key. And the second question regarding fashion at UEL, University of East London. So fashion marketing, it's a growing and it's a developing industry. One of the things that we're doing at University of East London is we are trying to make it much more broad. So obviously I'm from Nigeria, but I teach in the UK. And a lot of the way fashion is taught is it's very Western, it's very European. But we really are doing everything we can to expand people's awareness of fashion, not just from the Western world, fashion from Africa, fashion from Asia, fashion from different parts of the world. And being on a conference like this is a really, really great space to do that, because I'm hearing from amazing people who have that insight, who have that direct of understanding. So that's something that we can definitely do to make even more people aware of what fashion is in different parts of the world. And that's something that we're encouraging people to learn about and understand about. And again, it goes to the point of being able to document what fashion is. More people knowing about it, more people speaking about it will in turn lead to even more people knowing and speaking about it as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Before I go to Franco, let me ask you, do you think our African cultures can limit the growing of the fashion industries in Africa?
Do I think Africa? So straight away, I personally would say no. The first thought that comes to mind is no. I think African culture is something that can really expand and really grow what fashion is from the African point of view. I think it's what makes, one of the things about fashion is that there should be distinction, there should be something unique, something different. If everyone does exactly the same thing in fashion, it's not really fashion, it's just like uniform, there's nothing interesting about it. But understanding different techniques, different ways of doing things is something that really supports what fashion is. So I don't think African culture limits fashion. I think it should be something that's celebrated, something that people should be made more aware of. So even if it's down to the climate, why would people wear, say, lighter fabric? That's one of the key things is down to climate. So those different things should really support fashion. Those things should really support what fashion is, and they should support African designers presenting their fashion wares.
We have another person, actually a connection to their relatives to advertise for them leaving out the model. So this person is asking you that, why do you think designers are not using models to promote their clothes and they give to their families? Do you think this is something to answer?
No, that sounds fine. Yeah, I think that's one of the ways that can take place. There's a phrase known as word of mouth. If you've got, say, a family member wearing your clothes and it's something that will appeal to other people, as soon as they see it worn, I say, I don't want to say a real person. If they see it worn on a person, automatically it's going to get their attention. If it's something that stands out, they'll definitely be asking, where did you get this from? How can I get this made? So whether that's on a model or on a real person, either way, as long as people are seeing it, as long as that awareness of that design is coming out, I think that's the key thing. There's something that is seen sometimes, even, so for example, one of the things that I'm aware of is something called influencer marketing. And the thing about influencers is they're not necessarily a model type, they're just seen as a regular person. So seeing something on, say, a regular person, like a next door neighbor, a family member, you're more in tune to relate with and connect with them, as opposed to seeing it something on, say, a model. Not to say that models can't wear designer clothes. Obviously, it's a form of marketing. It's something that will definitely get people's attention. But another area, another form of marketing, another form of attention, just doing it just simply through word of mouth, speaking to someone who's very close to you, someone who you can connect with much more easily, much more fluently. That's another way to get people to that's another way to gain more awareness about brands and about clothing that they're making. So whether it's on a model or a person next door, a family member, as long as that awareness takes place, I think that's the key thing that needs